All right. Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Good morning.
I'm Sergeant Harkin. I'm going to be teaching you a little bit about the history of the Purple Heart this morning. It's a very important award to me. I actually have one myself, so it kind of resonates in my heart. That's kind of why I want to tell you all about this. How do you reward the members of a revolution that are overthrowing a tyrannical government for their arguably treasonous acts? How do you do that? That's what George Washington had to ask himself on August 7th, 1782. He had just overthrown a government, and he had to award his soldiers for what he was doing. And what they were doing was treason. They were run down, they were completely broke as an army, and their morale was low, even though they had just won because they hadn't been awarded for their actions. So George Washington decided to come up with the Purple Heart. The Purple Heart is the American Army's oldest award, and arguably one of the most important. It has changed in both appearance and meaning since its creation by George Washington. As you can see here, this is the original Purple Heart. It was silk, made of silk. It was worn over the left breast, and it's a Purple Heart with the word merit because it was awarded for merit back then. Its meaning has changed a little. Private Joseph Martin has a really good quote on the reason for the creation of the Purple Heart. It is, "Here was the army starving and naked, and there their country sitting still and expecting the army to do notable things while fainting from sheer starvation." So Private Martin was basically saying America was expecting the army to do all these great things even though they were lacking food, funding, that kind of thing. And it was very important to them that they got recognized for their awards. In 1942, until 1942, the Purple Heart kind of faded from their history books. It was awarded to 3 people during the Revolutionary War, and then after that, it really wasn't seen again until 1942. It basically came back because of Pearl Harbor. It was the first time anybody had been awarded the Purple Heart after they died. The massive tolls at Pearl Harbor really brought to light that we needed to award people who had died in combat. September 4th, it was changed to solely injuries and deaths of 1942. So instead of being an award for merit, military merit and valor like it was, because the Purple Heart was basically the Medal of Honor before it became the Purple Heart, it is now awarded only for people who are injured or die in combat. A specific example from that time frame is on August 2nd, 1943, Lieutenant John F. Kennedy was on a ship and it was struck. He managed to save everybody on that ship despite being injured except for 2 of his crew members. When he was asked how he received the medal, he said it was involuntary. They sank my boat. And it kind of speaks to what the Purple Heart means. You don't earn the award. You earn it through being injured, but it's not an act of valor. It's kind of a gift from the government to you for your actions. Also in 1944, there was the record set for the most Purple Hearts awarded. Master General Frederick was awarded his 8th Purple Heart in 1944, which is pretty crazy. All right. From World War II to present, a little bit of history about the Purple Heart. In the 1950s, a bunch of soldiers in Alaska got frostbite, and there's a big controversy because they wanted to award them Purple Heart. Congress decided that they're going to rule out frostbite. Purple Heart is not awarded for frostbite anymore. In the 1980s, Reagan declares that acts of terrorism are qualifiable. So if a military member is injured in an act of terrorism, they qualify for Purple Heart. If some of you remember the Fort Hood incident, where Major Nadal shot a bunch of people at Fort Hood and injured them, there was a big debate over that because President Obama declared it a workplace violence incident, and they didn't award those people Purple Hearts. In the 80s, a bunch of soldiers were also injured from heat stroke, so that was ruled out. Congress said, no, we're not giving out Purple Hearts for heat stroke. In the 90s, they decided that in 1996, prisoners of war are now eligible, so people who are held as POWs in foreign countries can get Purple Hearts. Here's some statistics about the Purple Heart. It shows how many Purple Hearts were awarded during each of the big wars, starting with World War I, because there was 3 in the Revolutionary War, and then it wasn't really awarded again until World War I. The big number at the bottom is total estimated. 1,606,296 Purple Hearts awarded since World War I as of May 11, 2011. That's a pretty big number. 1 million people, over 1.5 million people, and that's just since 2000, and that doesn't include from 2011 to 2009. The big one is obviously World War II, and if they had awarded the Purple Heart during the Civil War, it would be about 1 million higher because the Civil War had the most casualties of Americans. All right, in conclusion, the Purple Heart is still a relevant part of the American military. It has been awarded over 1.5 million times at a high price for America's way of life. The Purple Heart is America's Army's oldest award and arguably one of the most important, and has changed both in appearance and meaning since its creation by President George Washington. Many paid the price. If you were to put all the people that have the Purple Heart that are currently living into Houston, 1 in 4 people would have the Purple Heart. There's over 500,000 people who are currently living that have a Purple Heart. That's all I got to say about the Purple Heart. I hope you guys learned something today.